She finally spoke after 3 long days of silence. Her voice was barely a whisper, fragile but filled with weight. "I miss my daddy. He said he'd come back." Those words shattered the hearts of everyone who heard them. It wasn't that she had forgotten him. It was the opposite. She remembered everything. She remembered his laugh, the way he held her when she was scared, the promises he made with that warm smile of his, and most of all, she remembered that final moment, the moment the ocean stole him forever. That little girl was Nora, the daughter of actor Malcolm Jamal Warner. The world has seen the footage, the child collapsing, screaming her father's name as his body was pulled lifeless from the sea. A single heartbreaking moment spread across the internet like wildfire, leaving millions stunned. It all started with something so small, so innocent, a red and yellow beach ball. They were just playing by the water when it slipped away, floating out toward the waves. "Daddy, my ball's going," she cried. He looked at her and smiled, the way only a father could. "Don't cry, baby, I'll get it back." That smile, her memory of it was the last one she would ever see. He dove into the water without hesitation. At first, it looked like nothing unusual, just a father chasing after a toy for his little girl. But hidden beneath the calm surface was a dangerous rip current. Within moments, he was in trouble. He struggled against the tide, arms thrashing, fighting to return. Nora screamed his name, waiting for him to come back. But the sea was merciless. A towering wave rose and crashed over him. And then, nothing. The crowd panicked. Some shouted. Some froze. Others dropped their phones in shock. But Nora stood still. She stared at the water, fists clenched, whispering through her tears. "He promised. He said he'd come back." By the time emergency responders arrived, it had already been too long. Divers searched desperately, and when they finally pulled Malcolm from the ocean, he was holding the beach ball in his hands. Even in death, he had kept his promise. That image, his lifeless body clutching the toy, shook the world. Tributes poured in. Clips from his acting career resurfaced. News anchors struggled to speak through tears. Celebrities posted messages of grief. But none of that could match the silence of a little girl who no longer had her father. For 3 days, Nora didn't speak. She didn't cry, didn't laugh, didn't ask for toys or cartoons. She sat by the window, staring at the waves. She hugged his sweater close, breathing in while that little scent of him remained. She held the beach ball like it was part of him. And then, finally, she whispered the words that tore millions apart. "I miss my daddy. He said he'd come back." That wasn't the end of her heartbreak. Later, her family found a napkin on her pillow. In her childlike handwriting, she had written, "He didn't die saving the world. He died saving my world." It was simple, but it carried more power than entire novels about grief. The truth was, Malcolm had planned that beach trip because he wanted more time with her. Work had kept him away too often, and guilt had been eating at him. He told a friend shortly before, "I just want to make memories with her before she grows up and forgets how it feels to laugh with her dad." And he did make memories that day. They built sand castles. He let her bury his legs and call him her chocolate statue. They laughed until people nearby stopped to watch. Some recognized him from television. Others just admired a father being present with his daughter. No one knew those would be their final moments together. Now those memories are all she has left. The boardwalk walks, his off-key singing in the car, his nightly habit of kissing her forehead and saying, "You're everything good about me," and the one memory she never wanted, the sight of the ocean taking him away. Fans have turned the beach where he died into a memorial. Flowers, teddy bears, and handwritten notes cover the sand. Among them lies the letter that broke the world. "Dear Daddy, I hope heaven has beaches. I hope they let you swim without waves. I hope you still have my ball. I'll wait here until you come back. Love, your girl." Millions have read it. Millions have wept. Oprah called it the most heartbreaking father-daughter story of the decade. Taraji P. Henson shared the letter online with the caption, "My soul is crushed. Hold your babies tight tonight." But while the world mourns, Nora still sits on her bed, holding that same beach ball and whispering, "Come back, Daddy, please come back." And as if her pain wasn't already unbearable, Something even darker came to light. Later, during a courtroom hearing, a new piece of evidence was shown. Security footage revealed Malcolm outside a school, confronting a man in a dark hoodie. The camera was grainy, but the image was clear. The man pulled something from his coat. Malcolm shoved him back, shielding his daughter behind him. Then the screen went black. Gasps filled the courtroom. The truth was undeniable. His death was no accident. He had been targeted, ambushed, and he gave his life to protect his daughter. Malcolm's mother wailed so loudly she had to be carried out. Reporters fell silent. Even the judge paused, shaken by the revelation. And then, something extraordinary happened. Nora, who hadn't cried once throughout the entire ordeal, stood up. She walked to the center of the courtroom, trembling but determined. Her voice cracked, but her words rang with power. No, he knew. He knew what was coming. He looked me in the eye that morning and told me to go inside, to lock the door, and not to look back. He didn't just die. He chose to stand between me and death. That's not random. That's what heroes do. Her words struck the room like thunder. Jurors wiped tears from their eyes. The bailiff looked away, hiding his own emotion. No one could argue with her. When the judge called for recess, Nora refused to leave. She stood in the very spot where the footage had been played, clutching her father's chain around her neck. It still smelled like him. It still felt warm, as if some part of him had never left. And for the first time, her small hands trembled. Her knees wavered. The silence she had carried since that day was cracking. Someone whispered from the back of the courtroom, "She hasn't cried once." And it was true. Not during the funeral. Not while watching the ocean replay his final moment. Not during the endless nights clutching his sweater. She had held her pain inside like a locked box. But now, standing in that courtroom, she seemed ready to let it go. The weight of her words, her silence, her grief, it carried more than sorrow. It carried a message. Her father may have been taken too soon, but he left behind something stronger than even the ocean's pull. The love of a child who refuses to let his memory fade. Because to Nora, he wasn't just an actor, a celebrity, or a man in the headlines. He was her hero. He was her protector. He was her whole world. And even though the sea stole him, even though fate cut his life short, he kept his promise in the only way that mattered. He didn't die saving the world. He died saving her world. And that truth will live forever, carried in her whispers, her memories, and the love that not even death could wash away. In that raw, unguarded moment of weakness, she fell to the floor of the courtroom. Her knees buckled beneath her, and she released a sound that silenced every voice in the room. It wasn't just a sob, nor was it a simple cry. It was something deeper, an anguished scream that carried years of grief, anger, and unspoken pain. A sound that would echo in the hearts of everyone who heard it. Reporters waiting outside the doors caught the cry on their recorders. Within minutes, someone uploaded it online. 20 minutes later, it had spread everywhere. Headlines raced across the internet. The cry that shook the courtroom. Hashtags filled the trending lists. Hashtag justice for Jamal. Hashtag she died in single quotes T cry until now. Hashtag he died for her. Millions of people listened. Millions wept. Millions demanded answers. But beyond the viral posts and sensational headlines was something much quieter. A daughter, broken and scarred, who had grown up watching her father die. She was still struggling to understand what her life would mean without him. When the recess ended and court resumed, the judge returned to his seat. His eyes softened when he looked at her. The weight of her grief had shifted something in him. "Would you like to say anything else before we continue?" he asked gently. She rose to her feet. Her voice was hoarse, trembling, but steady enough to be heard. "I just want the truth to matter. I want the world to stop pretending like this didn't happen. He wasn't just an actor. He wasn't just a name in the headlines. He was my father. He read me bedtime stories. He picked me up when I fell. He told me monsters weren't real. And when one came for me, he became my shield." The courtroom froze in silence. The judge swallowed hard, his own emotions threatening to break through. Finally, he spoke the words everyone had been waiting to hear. "We have enough. This court acknowledges that Jamal Warner's death was not a tragic accident. It was an act of deliberate sacrifice. This case will move forward under new charges. Gasps rippled through the room. Some people wept openly. Reporters scrambled to capture every reaction, their cameras flashing, unable to keep up with the emotion unraveling before them. This was no longer about closure, it was about truth, about honoring a man who had given everything, not for attention, not for glory, but for love. As Jamal's daughter walked out of the courthouse that evening, sunlight spilled across her face, the same sunlight that had shone on the day her father died. But this time, she did not shrink from it. She walked forward with strength. She was no longer just the girl whose father had died saving her. She was the one making sure the world remembered him. And at last, the world was listening. The day of Malcolm Jamal Warner's funeral arrived, and the atmosphere felt unbearably heavy, as if time itself had slowed. The church was filled with mourners, friends, family, and fans. Black veils covered swollen eyes. Tears streamed silently, and grief hung in the air like smoke. No one looked more broken than his daughter. Since the release of the courtroom recording, she hadn't spoken a single word, not to her relatives, not to her friends, not even to the therapist who had flown in to help. She had carried her pain in silence, but standing at the edge of her father's casket, holding the folded American flag pressed into her trembling hands, her silence finally broke. 5 words, sharp and haunting, escaped her lips. "He died saving my life." The room gasped. Some clutched their chests, others sobbed openly. Until that moment, no one, not even the family, had known the full truth of what had happened the night of the fire. The public only knew fragments. The fire alarms that failed, the smoke that spread too quickly, the chaos. But they didn't know the most important part. They didn't know that Malcolm had run into the fire. His daughter had been trapped upstairs in her bedroom, the lock jammed, smoke filling the room. Malcolm, barefoot and coughing, broke down the door with his own body. Security footage, unreleased until the funeral, showed the moment he lifted his daughter out of the window and into the arms of a firefighter. Seconds later, the smoke swallowed him, and he collapsed inside. When the recording played inside the church, not a single eye remained dry. Even the priest turned his head away, overcome with grief. His daughter gripped the folded flag tighter against her chest, shaking. And then, as if the pain wasn't already unbearable, another twist unfolded. At the back of the church, a woman rose. She was slender, in her mid-30s, wearing dark glasses and holding the hand of a young boy. Whispers spread through the pews immediately. Who is she? Why does the child look so much like Malcolm? The Warner family turned in confusion as the woman walked slowly to the front. She placed a letter on top of the coffin, kissed it softly, and whispered something no one else could hear. The room erupted with speculation. It didn't take long for the truth to surface. She was Malcolm's former fiancé, and the child his son, a secret the world, and even his daughter, had never known. The letter revealed Malcolm's final message, written in his own hand. "To my children, both of you, you are the best part of me. I didn't get everything right, and I know that now. But I'd trade my life 1,000 times over to keep you safe. I hope one day you'll find each other and forgive me." When his daughter heard those words, the sound that tore from her wasn't just grief, it was a scream. She bolted out of the church, past the whispers, past the flashing cameras, past the reporters shouting her name. She ran until she reached the only place that still felt safe, her father's music studio. Inside, dust covered the instruments. Notebooks lay open, tapes were water damaged, but under a cloth sat his final project, an unfinished track recorded for her birthday. She pressed play. His voice filled the room, soft, imperfect, but real. "Hey baby, if you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it. But I need you to know, Daddy loves you. No matter where I am, I'm always right here, inside your heart." She collapsed onto the studio floor, clutching her chest as his voice echoed around her. And then, almost instinctively, she sang. Through tears, her voice cracked and trembled, but it carried a raw beauty. She sang over the beat he had left behind. Someone recorded it. Within a day, the video spread online. Millions watched, millions cried. The world grieved the loss of a legend, but gains something powerful in return: a story of love, sacrifice, and a daughter rising from the ashes of her father's memory. In the weeks that followed, the media storm intensified. News anchors argued on television. Some questioned whether Malcolm had been wrong to hide his son. Others believed he was only protecting the boy from fame and scrutiny. Tabloids exploded with theories. One even claimed the fire wasn't an accident at all, but deliberate, perhaps set by someone close to him, a jealous rival, or a bitter ex. The police reopened the investigation. Through it all, his daughter remained silent again. But this time, her silence wasn't born of trauma. It was strength. She now knew the truth. Her father wasn't perfect, but he was hers. And she carried his story forward in her voice, in her art, in the ashes he had left behind. They say heroes wear capes, but sometimes they were nothing more than a simple smile, carrying hearts too big for this world. Malcolm Jamal Warner did not die in an accident. He died because he chose to protect the one person who meant everything to him. The headlines will fade one day. Social media will move on. New stories will take over. But for his daughter, time is frozen. Every laugh they once shared echoes in silence now. Every bedtime story, every whispered "I love you" lives only in memory. The man who once held her hand through thunderstorms is now only a photograph on her nightstand. And in her heart, a heavy truth lingers. She still believes it might be her fault. If she hadn't called for him that night, if she hadn't forgotten her toy in the car, maybe her father would still be alive. That guilt carves itself into her soul, uncheckable. But the truth remains: Malcolm did not hesitate. He did not pause. He ran into the flames without a second thought. That is what fathers do, and in that one choice, he reminded the world what love really looks like. Not the shallow kind people display online, but the kind that sacrifices everything. So before you scroll past, remember him, not just as an actor, not just as a public figure. Remember Malcolm Jamal Warner as a father who gave everything. Heroes may fall, but love, the kind that saves, never dies.